And hello, and welcome to episode 2 of Married with Baby Cat. So speaking of Baby Cat, the other third star of the show.
Our princess.
Explain to our listeners how she's been acting the last couple of days.
Oh, our little diva. Well, right now, I bought her wet cat food on sale. I think it's the companion brand. Prior to this, we were feeding her either Sheba or I got her onto Fancy Feast, which, according to my friend, said, I have now created a monster. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll just give her the Fancy Feast for now. Fancy Feast wasn't on sale this week, so I bought this companion brand thinking, all right, well, she'll probably eat it. It looks like Sheba and kind of like Fancy Feast.
We wanted to save some money, right?
Yeah, we wanted to save some money.
See what happens when you save money.
Yeah, she won't eat it. She won't touch it. This is 2 days in a row, and she hasn't touched this wet food. It's like, well, you're going to have to sit there and wait then, because we're not going to the store to go buy you Fancy Feast.
And we go to work, so we feed her in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
We go to work. Most of the time she has previously this food scarfed down in about 2 seconds.
Yep.
But other times, sometimes you leave it there and she'll kind of munch on it and do her thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you come back from work and bowl's usually empty. Well, I've come back from work the last couple of days and it has not been touched. It is literally sitting in the exact same spot.
Yep.
Not one bite missing.
She's so bad.
So she is intentionally starving herself.
Yeah.
Because she does not like this wet food.
Yeah, she doesn't like this wet food.
Now,
she has her dry food.
She does have her dry
eating,
food, yes.
But she won't touch the wet food. She's such a brat.
She is a big brat.
That's our little co-host.
So that's the third party, the biggest star of the show.
Yep.
You'll probably be hearing from Baby Cat later.
Yep.
She always chimes in somewhere.
Especially now with her diva demands.
Yep. Our big diva. So we wanted to let everyone know what we're working with here. Because, it's not easy. It's not easy. We have a hard partner. It was very demanding.
Yep.
We like many things together. A lot of things we bond on. We've talked about this last week. Sports and our hatred for each other's team kind of just brought us together.
Yes.
In an ironic, weird way.
Go Eagles.
Star Wars.
Yes.
Marvel stuff. We're into Marvel movies now together and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that's really brought us together, and the one thing I think we've bonded on since the beginning and bonded on the most, and probably our biggest topic is going to be this show, mainly every week. Definitely a big topic this week is music. So music is a big part of Melissa and I's lives.
Yep. We
go to a lot of concerts.
Love going to concerts.
We love going to concerts. I mean, one of my first gifts was a tickets to Aerosmith concert.
And it was amazing.
Which we will get into.
No pun intended.
So we'll get into how much Melissa loves Aerosmith.
Greatest band ever.
Where did your music tastes develop, Melissa? Why do you think you like what you like? Why do you not like what you don't like?
Oh, I don't know. Well, my parents listened to rock. I mean, I grew up on the Beatles. Obviously, I think every child should grow up on the Beatles. But we grew up on the Beatles. Yeah, we listened to again, we had such a great radio station in Philadelphia, MMR, and they would play, such great rock music, and you'd hear a lot of different things. The obsession with Aerosmith happened, I would say, 96, 97.
Pretty late in there.
Yeah, really late. Well, I was, God, how old? I must have been 11
13,
or 12.
12, 13, yeah.
Yeah. When I discovered them, I was watching, and that's when I started getting into Saturday Night Live, and I saw them on Saturday Night Live, and they did the Nine Lives, those was the Nine Lives album was coming out. And they were on there doing their thing, and they were awesome, and I was like, oh, this band is so cool.
So did you know of them before that moment, or is it just kind of a name you knew of them by?
No, I didn't know, I didn't really know them. I knew their songs, because once I found out who they were, and I found out that they did Dream On, and I found out that they did Crying, I was like, oh my God, I love this band. I didn't know this was Aerosmith. Oh man, and then it just went from there.
As a big Aerosmith fan, explain to all us listeners out here, and probably people who've heard them and kind of been wondering, what's with the Shabba Dabby Doo thing? What's with the scat that he decided to throw into every song since like 1985.
Oh, that's just
or
his
earlier,
thing.
maybe, possibly.
That's just his thing.
Because if you listen to early 70s Aerosmith, which I love early 70s Aerosmith,
He does it.
there's not much of that.
Not a whole lot. It happens after he gets sober.
So soberness leads to scatting, apparently.
There's 3 parts of Aerosmith. There's drugged up era, which is basically the 70s. Then there's the sober era, which is after 83 and Done with Mirrors. Well, Done with Mirrors was the last non-sober album. And then there's the pop era, which we don't discuss too much. But,
That's kind of more the recent phase,
yeah, that's
right?
anything
Yeah.
after 2000s.
So, okay, so you grew up with the Beatles. Mm-hmm. Natural progression to Aerosmith. Mm-hmm. And I know you love Van Halen, 80s music. Ozzy, things like that. So natural progression, because they're all those guys were big fans of the Beatles. I mean, Aerosmith has claimed, how great fans they are. I mean, they made that horrible, terrible Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band movie.
Yeah, well, that movie, I think they were just getting paid for it, and then they ended up trashing the Bee Gees' dressing room, so they got it back.
Yep, the poor Bee Gees, who everyone likes, and just seems like such nice guys. Here comes me and Aerosmith, youngsters, trying to be cool.
Yeah.
Trash the old guys.
They also had the best song on that album.
Oh, yeah.
If you think about it.
Right.
I mean, Come Together, everyone still knows that one.
Right, even though it's not even from Sgt. Pepper's, but that's okay.
Whatever.
So, okay, so you grew up liking the Beatles, natural progression Aerosmith, and some of these other bands. But you're a huge metalhead. And Beatles does not connect to metal. I mean, Beatles can connect to a lot of rock, but it doesn't really connect to metal. I mean, Ozzy's a huge Beatles fan.
Yeah, and Ozzy was kind of the start of metal, and I think the Beatles have because the Beatles had such an influence on Ozzy, and he seems to be the grandfather of metal with Black Sabbath. And a lot of those guys, the metal guys in the beginning, that's who they were listening to. So it was Alice Cooper, even though I guess he's more hard rock, but at the time he was metal. I'm not too sure about Motorhead. They were around, but I don't know what their influences were.
Yeah, they were around, but not really. They were one of the bands that people started to learn later because some of these metal groups start saying, oh, our influence was Motorhead. So metal fans go, oh, who is this Motorhead? And then they kind of retroactively became...
Yeah. But I don't know if they were influenced by the Beatles or not. But I think, everybody seems to stem from the Beatles. It's very rare you find somebody that hasn't. But
it's a stretch because I love Ozzy. Mm-hmm. And I do the easier metal.
Yeah.
I guess whatever you want to call it. I can do the Judas Priest and the Iron Maiden and Metallica, of course.
But you couldn't do Slayer.
But I can't do Slayer. I can't do this Mastodon. I can't do groups like that. Like we talked last week,
you
or
could do
Testament.
I love Testament.
So, how did you get to that level of?
I don't know.
metal?
I mean, I've always liked, even as a teen, growing into figuring out music. Like I said, I was a huge Ozzy fan. I really liked, all these dark kind of guys. I loved Metallica. I still do. It wasn't until later on I was like, I really should explore metal more because there's probably some really cool stuff because I like these guys, I like harder rock and I love doom metal, so I was like, let me check out some other stuff, and then I got into Slayer, Sepultura, and then onto some of the current stuff like Ghost and Power Trip I really like right now. Yeah, so I mean it's not all metal. There's some metal that like I mentioned last week, I wasn't a big fan of metalcore. That's a little, I don't want to say it's too much, but it's a little weird. Well, not weird. It's not even weird. It's just I don't like it. Yeah, and then like that crazy like black metal.
Black metal.
Yeah, Gorgoroth. It's not even because it's scary. It just sounds bad. Now I'm gonna get killed, but
probably. You have to give up
the Satan people are gonna come after me.
You have to give up your metal card now. It's officially revoked.
Yeah.
Leather Jacket Sean's not gonna be happy.
No, he doesn't like them either.
No, he doesn't listen to that crazy metal either.
He doesn't mess with that.
We don't bring metal where they talk about burning down churches in our house.
Yeah. But well, yeah, they're just insane overall.
Exactly.
But yeah, I stay away from them. I would listen to it just to give it a shot, but I haven't liked anything I've heard yet. But hopefully we won't get killed now.
I consider myself a rock historian. Mm-hmm. I usually surprise my wife with some crazy trivia knowledge that I know.
You do.
Which I've learned through the years from various sources. But I grew up the Beatles. My favorite band of all time. Nothing's ever going to replace it. The first album I ever heard was Abbey Road, which is funny because I heard their last album. I kind of went backwards.
Yeah.
But I heard Abbey Road and Christmas Day. We got our first CD player.
Oh, man.
It's like early 90s.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Maybe mid-90s, whatever it was. So whenever CDs came around. And one of the first, we got 3 CDs to start. One was Star Wars Return of the Jedi music. The whole CD. Which was awesome.
Yeah.
An Elvis CD for my dad. Because he loves Elvis. Elvis is his end-all, be-all.
So is my grandma.
And then we got a Beatles CD because I have 2 older brothers and they were into them. Now, I heard the Beatles. I grew up with my dad, driving in the car, and we'd always listen to CBS FM 101.1, which now they've moved to, like, 70s, 80s, but they used to be 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
The oldie station. So my dad grew up, so I knew the Beatles, but they wouldn't play late 60s Beatles. It was a little too
Yeah, they would
out
play,
there for
I
them.
remember that growing up, too. They would play, like, early
They
Beatles.
play like early Beatles.
Yeah.
So I knew who the Beatles were. But to me, I mean, I liked them. I liked I Want to Hold Your Hand and all that. And I didn't really start liking that stuff much more until later, until I really discovered the Beatles. But I liked those songs as a young kid. But I thought that's what they were. And then I heard this Abbey Road album that my brothers got. And I was like, whoa, what the heck is this? So mine was blown. The best ending of a band, of an album, whatever you want to say, in history.
Yeah.
I mean, a medley that goes on for this whole, if you're on vinyl, it's the whole second half of the album. Just this medley. It's just a bunch of hosh-posh mix of songs that George Martin, the producer, put together and just made the greatest ending in a band's history ever.
Yep.
I mean, to go out like that. Most bands just, we're broken up now, and that was our last album. Sorry, guys. With the Beatles, they had a plan. They're like, this is going to be our last album. We got to make it really good. And they did. From there, I went to, I had 2 older brothers, as I mentioned, much older. And my dad, who's huge music. I mean, we were a huge music family, and he grew up in the 50s and 60s. He brought all that music stuff, Elvis, Buddy Holly, Roy Orbison, any of that country, Chuck Berry, and then you go Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson, all that. So he brought all that. So I had a big eclectic mix. Then I had my 2 brothers who really grew up in the 80s, my crazy for 80s hair metal band, which nobody seems to understand except me and my brothers. We will listen to when they have VH1 Classic or MTV Classic now, I think it's called, and they have 80s metal night. It's like the greatest thing in the world. Like, we go crazy. Pretty much like bands from every era, obviously 60s, Rolling Stones, Who, Beatles, etc., more, of course. Then you go into 70s, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, The Standards, Kiss, Van Halen. Go into 80s, Motley Crue, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. Whitesnake. I love me some Whitesnake. Tony Catania. That's my girl.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever her name is.
Tawny
Catania, whatever her name is.
And
That's
her Olympic performance on
the
cars.
Yep, she got in trouble for beating up her husband. But that's okay. He was a professional baseball player, but he got beat up by a woman. But it's okay. These are baseball players we're talking about, so that's a different story. Then we get the 90s, Aerosmith, I do like.
And it's recorded here, folks.
Yeah, right. Some stuff in the 90s. Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Stone Temple Pilots, Rage Against the Machine. Yeah. I mean, 90s was
cool.
That's like our period. I can rattle off a million 90s bands, Radiohead, which we'll get to later. And then you get into the early 2000s, and it was pretty much just classic rock for me at that point then. Nothing new.
Yeah.
And then you got some good bands came out. I mean, there was a Foo Fighters since the 90s, but they really hit their stride in the 2000s, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Well,
Danimal would disagree with me, though. But,
yeah.
Then you got the Killers, were a new band. I heard them, and I was like, wow, great. It brought me back to what I consider probably the best era, the 80s of music.
Yeah.
Brought me back to, like, Duran Duran, and Depeche Mode, and era, so that was cool having them. I'm going to get some slack for this, but Coldplay, I like.
Terrible.
Most of this.
I can't stand
Coldplay.
Have a
strong passion for Coldplay.
I don't. And the guy seems so nice, and I just feel bad because
Chris Martin is a very nice guy.
I don't like their music. And I feel bad because he seems so nice.